y'all. Welcome to Recovered by Christ. It is me, Jay. I've gotten a few episodes, I'm over 10, which is like really a good pat on the back to myself, really, just for staying committed. But I wanted to take a moment and refresh you on what we're doing here. I call the podcast Recovered by Christ because I believe in the Jesus Christ of the Bible, which means that I believe in sin and the depravity of man, meaning man in his nature is bent towards doing things that are distant from God, doing things that are more about what feels good and less about what I was created for. I'm trying to simplify what sin is because I do believe a certain measure of what I'm putting out there needs to be available to an unbeliever. The essence of sin is I'm doing something that is outside of how God designed it to be done. That could be anything. And that's why we need God's word. But when I talk about being recovered by Christ, it's more than just you're a sinner. It's that we're experiencing situations in our lives, whether it be in the way we're parenting, the way we're engaging marriage, addiction, the way we're engaging our spiritual nature. We're doing these things in a way that is dictated by man or the flesh. And the goal of a Christian's life is to see those things recovered by Christ through the cross. So, for example, addiction. I'll stick with something baser that I don't have to get into like the mud with. When you're in addiction, that's not the way God designed you to experience life. God being Yahweh, the creator of all things, right? And through Jesus, God created all things, right? By him, this is in Colossians chapter 1. I want to say it's like verse 18. All things were created by him, through him, and for him. And so when you understand that, my addiction did not come by God. My addiction is not being experienced as a testimony of God's goodness. And my addiction is not something that's happening for Jesus. Like that's 100% for me, dog. Like I'm doing it because it feels good. And evidence of that is that it's literally it's seeking out the things in my life that I love and killing and destroying them. Chief of which is my own body, but also like my relationships with my family and all of that. That's not how I was designed to be experiencing life. When I entered recovery, I started doing spiritual principles, right, which is the 12 steps, and I started learning the word and living according to what the word said, and I saw a whole new world open up, and that world was recovered by Christ. You got to think about it this way. The cross is the death of something, and the resurrection is the life of something. For you to experience something recovered by Christ, the way that you intuitively and instinctively do that thing has to die. And then that whole thing, whatever it is, has to be recovered by Christ. And when it's recovered by Christ, it's always, not almost, it's always going to match with the Word of God. And so when you see it that way, we're talking about the way that we're doing life. Every topic ever has a version of it that operates by, through, and for Christ. And if you don't take the time to figure out what it looks like when it's been recovered by Christ, recovered from the sin nature, recovered from its fallen stasis, when you don't take the time to see what that fallen expression looks like as it's been recovered by Christ on the cross, then you're missing the whole point. And so when I'm doing these podcasts, I want you to understand I'm trying to teach you the recovered nature of a topic, not the fallen nature. But I have to speak to the fallen nature so that you can see how Jesus Christ of Nazareth, over 2,000 years ago, lived the human life with the fullness of God dwelling within him. And that pleased God, by the way. But second to that was he took on our likeness so that he could be familiar with our expression. And when I say expression of creation, like he was acquainted with all of our sorrows. And in that, he went to the cross saying, all of this is fallen. All of it. There's not a thing that he didn't see that wasn't all of it. All of it. Demon-possessed people, like bodies that are disfigured that need healing, oppressed souls, homeless people, starving people, people killing babies, like all of it. Jesus looks at that and goes, this isn't how it was supposed to be. It's fallen. This is all the fallen nature. And he goes to the cross and says, I don't want it to be this way anymore. I'm going to open a door through my blood that it can be recovered to the purposes of God. That's this podcast. This podcast is to meditate on that. To meditate on what is the recovered state of a thing. And in that, you have got to embrace humility. You see, we do this thing in America where everything is so self-reliant. When I first started getting sober, I heard the word humility and attached it to the word humiliate. And I wrestled with that. It took some time before I realized that's not a good correlation. You know, I was not a very intelligent man coming into my sobriety. I rejected a lot of education in my life. And I just, I lived on the philosophies of a man who was literally caught up in the opioid epidemic, of the 2000 to 2010 era, and in that I had nothing. And so I'm like, okay, my addiction was humiliating. My addiction humiliated me and other people. And I related to that word that way for quite some time. And then I realized that I don't think I'm seeing that right. And if you're anything like me, you need a base definition. Webster's dictionary defines humility as freedom from pride or arrogance, the quality or state of being humble. And so in that, I start wondering, like, okay, it's actually the opposite of arrogance. It's actually the opposite of pride. And so how do I move forward with this shift in what Google would define as ethical quality of having an accurate and modest view of one's own importance? How do I shift into that, right? The truth of the matter is I have to recognize that I was in fallen nature. On my best day, me doing things in and of myself is me operating in a fallen nature. Bro, I don't care if you are bumping 6-7 figures through the stock market, if you're a business founder who's now expanded to multiple operating sites. I don't care, bro. If it's not given to God, it's operating in a fallen state. How much more would that thing flourish if it had been submitted to God? And if it wouldn't flourish in submission to God, then you know that you're actually doing it by evil means. And in that, I would say the root of humility is actually found in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. And in that, we read, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight a path for you. And so in that, it is, in my opinion, a working, defined vision for what a lifestyle of humility looks like. Contrary to that would be Proverbs 16:18, which states pride comes before the fall. And so that puts me at a fork in the road. I can have this inflated sense of self. I can have this arrogance that says, I don't need any help. I've got this. I can have this sense of pride that says my strength, wisdom, and resources are enough. I don't need anything else. That's pride. Humility says my vision, my wisdom, my strengths, and my resources are not enough. No matter what. Like, bro, I'll be dead honest. Just in the most simple thing of loving my wife, my wisdom, strengths, and resources are not enough. Why? Because my wife is looking for something that is spiritually fulfilling out of a romantic relationship with me. Listen, dude, I can spit game, I can give back massages, and I can cook dinner. And that woman will still be sitting next to me feeling unloved because I haven't connected with her. I haven't met soulish needs, things like giving her love, helping her enjoy her life, helping her find peace, helping her be patient, helping her be gentle, helping her discover new ways of being self-controlling, like controlling herself. Like if I'm not, those are all fruits of the Spirit. If I'm not partnering with her in a way that helps those things flourish, she will feel the deficit. And that's why oftentimes, like I've discovered in my own life, being in addictive relationships works really well because we're sedating that spiritual hunger. You're getting a false sense of peace, a false sense of control. You're getting a false sense of joy. And in that, the euphoria of the dopamine dumps and what have you creates this sense of love. And all of that starts to be this real demonic copycat. And you might think your needs are being met in your relationship. And then you're so sedated from the drugs that you don't even know better. And so in that, you have to learn that was the fallen state. So what is the recovered state? The recovered state is being so submitted to the Lord, acknowledging him so deeply in my marriage, as if to say my marriage could be a reflection of Christ in the church. I'm so rooted in that my wife experiences the peace of God in our relationship, that my wife is able to enter the joy of the Lord through our relationship, that my wife is able to be patient in a godly way. My wife is gentle. My wife has self-control. My wife is literally experiencing God's fruit in our marriage. In Galatians 5, it says the fruit of the Spirit is. So you have to understand you don't produce that. You root into the Spirit and it produces the fruit. Humility. If you refuse to do that in an internal relational way with God, it's prideful. And I would point you towards James 4:10. James 4:10 says, if you humble yourself, God will exalt you. That's the fruitfulness. If I humble myself before God with my marriage and I'm obedient to the calling of God in my marriage, right? If I'm doing what God calls me to do, meaning if my wife is pouting about something I did and I feel irritated that she's offended by that, that's the flesh. And then God says, go give her a hug and tell her you're sorry. I have to go give her a hug and tell her I'm sorry. I will feel that in my heart. When I say God says, I'm not saying I hear this audible voice like, go love your wife. No, something in my heart is like, and there's this war inside of me. The flesh is like, you shouldn't be offended. That's just my opinion. Pride. The Spirit is like, go be gentle. Go find a way to reconcile this by being loving and patient, being kind, not exalting yourself over this woman right now, right? The pride will literally lead to a fall in every scenario. If I sit in the chair and I'm like, nah, man, she needs to know how I feel. And if she can't handle it, that's her business. That's pride. And then what happens is it creates a fall. And the problem with pride is it's good at putting the blinders on. And so I might follow pride, produce a fall, but the scary thing is I won't see the fall. The fall might be my wife falling back from trusting me. My wife falling back from loving me honestly. My wife falling back from wanting to appreciate me. And that's a scary thing, dude, is that people could be falling away from you and you wouldn't even know it. Pride comes before the fall. You have to trust God on that, whether you see it or not. And then if you can root into humility in your marriage, in the way you're parenting your children, saying, God, I can't even be a good dad. I've done that. I've looked at God and said, man, the way that I parent this kid is trash. I'm short with him. I'm rude with him. I give him no attention sometimes. Like he'll be like, Daddy, can you play? And I'll be like, no, I got to do this thing. Sorry, bud. Like I'm so disconnected from his world. I'm not a good dad. He's got tons of toys. He's got a bigger bedroom than I have, even last year before I moved into the house I live at now. My son's bedroom is bigger than that room was. I'm like, he's spoiled materialistically. And in the same breath, I'm looking and I'm like, God, I'm not meeting his soul's needs. Humility. God, teach me, show me, fill me with your spirit and parent him through me that I might have a better way. That is how that right there is a fundamental level. It is the equation, rather, to seeing things recovered by Christ, is stepping back and saying, no matter how good it looks, it's disconnected from the soulish things that we are meant to experience in this world. God, help me. And God will recover every single time when you mean to obey. And as you obey, it might be hard at first, but God recovers it. And then you look back after so long and you're like, man, this is so much better than I would have thought. Like if I would have prayed to God, asking or trying to imagine so that I could speak out into existence a better way of parenting a year ago, I would not have imagined this. This is so much better than anything I would have ever asked for, I would have thought of, or I could have even imagined. This is the level of parenting God intended. And that's how you know it's been recovered by Christ. You know, for you program people out there, the reality of step 11 is this. It's that we're continuing to seek through prayer and meditation God's will. You're not seeking God's gifts to accomplish your will. You're seeking God's will. And only once you acquire the knowledge of God's will does step 11 introduce you to the power to carry that out, not the power to carry out your will. Step 11 in its essence is baked into the word humility. And it's funny because only after step 11 are you introduced to step 12, which step 12 is having had a spiritual awakening. Now, I know there's more to step 12, but my point here is I feel personally like step 11 and step 12 are connected in if you seek God's will and acquire the power to carry that out, it produces spiritual awakening. And what I'm here to preach about today or to teach about or to express is as you uncover God's will and you receive that spiritual awakening through the power of God being expressed to accomplish his will, you begin to see life recovered by Christ. And so I want to land the plane today by saying, allow yourself to depend on God. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not have it figured out. It's okay to have it figured out and set it down and see and ask God, seek it in his word and see if you really had it figured out. Pride won't do that. You might have been right. You might have been rooted in pride and you just weeded it out. You will never know if you're not humble enough to step into humility and say, God, you've got a better way. And if you live a life sitting down with any problem, whether you're doing well in the problem or not, sitting down, presenting it to God in prayer and analyzing it through his word, if you live that life, I promise you, you're going to start to see seemingly simple, mundane things that you didn't even know were operating in a fallen nature are going to start to come to life as they become recovered by Christ. And that's the life that I want for you. That's the ministry that I'm trying to offer on this podcast. So will you join me in walking in humility so that you can see your life and the lives of others recovered by Christ?